Hello, friends. Welcome back. This is John Laxmi inviting you to another episode of my Zoom Out series. This is a series in which we take a topic and examine it by zooming out, by stepping aside and viewing it from multiple angles and getting a better understanding. In this process, we usually end up with even more questions than we started with, and that's okay. Indeed, that's the whole point of this series. Are you ready? Let's zoom out. Today, we are going to be discussing the Harvard University. The university that's in the news a lot these days for all the wrong reasons, unfortunately. We're going to be doing this in two parts. In the first part, we'll examine how Harvard University became so famous worldwide, what makes it so great. And in part two, we're going to look at what went wrong and what Harvard should do. Let's dive in. So, Harvard University. What is Harvard University? Or rather, who is Harvard? Yep, there was a guy named John Harvard who donated 400 books to a college in Massachusetts Bay Colony long ago in the 1600s. Yes, in 1636. John Harvard had arrived from England just a couple of years earlier, and he loved this college, which was the first institution of higher education in America. And Harvard College then grew to become so great today. So, friends, Harvard University is 400 years old, older than America itself. And in the 1700s, as the country was taking shape, some of the founding fathers of the United States attended Harvard University. John Adams, John Quincy Adams, John Hancock, all these great men went to Harvard. Harvard opened its medical school in 1782. This is the first medical college that professionalized the study and practice of medicine. In the 1800s, Harvard's astronomers had mapped out the entire Milky Way galaxy and the position of the sun in the galaxy. In 1820s, Harvard introduced something new, a new concept that was revolutionary, the concept of electives. That is the idea that students can pick and choose what they study in college based on their own aptitudes and interest, rather than being told to study a curriculum developed by the university. This revolutionized higher education at Harvard and throughout the United States. In 1817, Harvard opened its law school. In 1920s, about 100 years ago, Harvard once again introduced something entirely new, the case study method. Harvard Business School introduced this method of taking real-world problems and then bringing them into the classroom to discuss them, to teach students how to solve them. Actually, I myself have been featured in one of the case studies at Harvard University. In the 1990s, I did an extremely challenging financing, a multi-billion-dollar financing in Venezuela. And the professor at Harvard Business School thought it would be a good idea to capture the essence of that in a case study. Check it out. In 1936, Harvard comes up with a new idea that public administration, the work done by governments, can also be taught in universities. So Harvard started the School of Government, which later became John F. Kennedy School of Government. In the 1940s, Harvard collaborated with IBM to produce the first programmable computer in the world. The Mark I computer was used in World War II. By the 1950s, Harvard researchers had developed methods of culturing viruses in laboratories, which then helped Jonas Salk invented the polio vaccine. In arts and literature too, Harvard was very famous. The famous poet T.S. Eliot went to Harvard. Many great leaders went to Harvard. I mentioned the founding fathers. Later, President Rutherford Hayes, he had attended Harvard. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, all of them went to Harvard. Many successful chief executive officers have attended Harvard. Jamie Dimon, who runs JP Morgan today, Meg Whitman, Andy Jassy, who runs Amazon, Mike Bloomberg, Steve Schwarzman, Steve Bannon, who is a buddy of Donald Trump. All of them attended Harvard. Many foreign leaders too attended Harvard. Felipe Calderon attended Harvard, then went on to become the president of Mexico. Juan Manuel Santos became the president of Colombia. Ban Ki-moon from South Korea, he became the Secretary General of the United Nations. In high tech, we often think of California, Silicon Valley, Stanford University. No, Harvard has a place in it too. The DNA technology, the technology of editing genes called the CRISPR technology was developed at Harvard by a famous researcher named George Church. So my friends, Harvard is a one-of-a-kind university. There's no other university like this in the world. Offers the breadth and depth in every field of study. No other university in the world has revolutionized education itself by innovations like electives, the case study method, collaboration with the private sector, school of government. All of these are great innovations. This is what makes Harvard so great. So then what happened? Why did this university run into trouble? We are going to examine this in part 2. Stay with me. We're going to examine what went wrong at Harvard University. And by now, all of you know why Harvard is in the news today so much. It's because it's locked in a fist fight with the Trump administration. Yes, many people associate the problems at Harvard with the name of this person on my t-shirt. But I'm here to tell you, guys, that Harvard has had a number of problems dating long before Trump ever came to power, even before his first term began in 2016. So we're going to take a look at all of these issues that have been plaguing Harvard and talk a little bit about what Harvard should do to fix them. Let's go back to the beginning. I mentioned that Harvard University is 400 years old, right? Yes, Harvard College was founded in 1636, but soon after that, it became part of a corporation, the Harvard Corporation. Yes, my friends, everything in America is a business. Harvard Corporation is the first company ever incorporated in the United States. Indeed, the Harvard Corporation is the first company incorporated in the entire Western Hemisphere. In 1650, the Harvard Corporation starts governing Harvard University, and ever since it's been running as a private university. Great, that's good, but the structure of this corporation, Harvard Corporation, is opaque. It's like a private club. There are 12 members on this board of directors of this company, and how they are elected is not well known to the public, even though the university is supposed to be serving the public. And for any outsiders to contest for a seat on this board, the prospective contestant has to collect, I think, 3,200 or 3,600 signatures, which makes it very difficult for outsiders to get into this private club. This has got to change. This has been going on for a long, long, long time, long before Trump became president. Number two, Harvard is a very rich university. All of you know it's one of the richest universities in the world. It's got an endowment fund of $53 billion. That's billion dollars. So we should ask, why is such a rich university, private university, tangled up for funding from the government of the United States? Friends, I'm here to tell you that the $53 billion that Harvard Endowment Fund has are all invested in illiquid investments. They are invested in real estate, venture capital, private equity, and even hedge funds. They are not invested in education. They are invested in external investments. There are many experts who say that the actual market value of these investments is nowhere near $52 to $53 billion. This means that in a financial crunch, as Harvard is in today, the endowment fund cannot sell its investments and turn them into cash readily. So Harvard Endowment Fund is very big, they're very rich, but it's mismanaged, and this has to be reformed. Number three, Harvard's fees are exorbitant. The fees that its students have to pay could range from $50,000 to all the way to $90,000 per year. We must ask, is the Harvard degree even worth such a high price? Who can afford them? No wonder only rich students can go to Harvard, or you have to borrow a whole lot of money to attend Harvard. And this is one of the reasons Harvard recruits a large number of foreigners, because all those foreigners are required to pay full freight so that Harvard can subsidize the fees for some Americans. And yet, a lot of the Americans also have to borrow a lot of money to attend Harvard. This has to be brought under control by Harvard streamlining its administration. This takes me to number four. Harvard's administration has grown so bloated that on several of the grants provided to Harvard by both the government and the private sector, 30% or more goes to administration, not to the research or other end use that the grant is made for, but the administration takes up a lot of the money. This has got to be reformed. And by the way, the administration at Harvard is also hobbling the faculty and students at Harvard. Many professors have complained that the administration is the one that has brought in all kinds of rules that have suffocated Harvard University's freedom, that have actually interfered with the ability of Harvard to pursue a liberal education. Indeed, many students at Harvard complain today that they are having to self-censor themselves. Over 90% in a survey said they self-censor themselves, they don't express their ideas freely, and they are not able to exchange ideas with one another. This is a very pitiable situation at one of the most liberal institutions in America. There is an institution called FIRE. It stands for Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. FIRE has been conducting surveys annually of various institutes, various universities, and has found that Harvard ranks very low in these rankings. In 2020, Harvard ranked 46 out of 55. In 2021, Harvard ranked 130 out of 159. In 2022, Harvard ranked 170 out of 203. In 2023, Harvard ranked dead last, 248 out of 248. Again in 2024, Harvard ranked dead last at the very bottom, 251 out of 251 institutions surveyed by FIRE. Now, there are some people who question the methodology of these FIRE surveys. Even if we allow for that, Harvard ranks very low at the bottom when it comes to individual freedoms and academic freedoms. This has got to change. And this, by the way, predates Trump administration. This has been going on for over a decade. This has got to change. Number 7, Harvard University has come under criticism, especially its Harvard Business School, for turning out graduates who go into the private sector in the pursuit of profits and don't behave ethically. We all know that during the financial crisis of 2008-2009, many of the Wall Street titans had come out of Harvard. There are also others outside Wall Street. Jeff Skilling, the famous CEO of Enron Corporation, which went bankrupt, he had attended Harvard. He has an MBA from Harvard. He was convicted of corporate crimes and went to prison. Rajat Gupta, the CEO of McKinsey, the global consulting firm, another Harvard graduate, he too was convicted of crimes and he went to prison. Luckily, this issue was addressed by Harvard. Srikant Datar, who is the dean of Harvard Business School today, he happens to be a friend of mine. He and two others wrote a book called Rethinking the MBA. And they introduced, about 10 years ago, several improvements to the curriculum, introducing topics like ethics and globalization into the MBA curriculum. This must continue. Number 8, about a dozen years ago, Harvard was hit by a massive class action lawsuit. Asian students complained that Harvard's admission processes discriminated against them. Harvard denied this vehemently for several years, but it went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, and Harvard was found to be practicing discrimination. Harvard promised to change its admissions processes, but to this day, many complain that its admissions processes have not completely been reformed. This must change. Next, number 9. A few years ago, in 2022, a documentary film was produced titled Harvard University Blacklists Its Best Black Professor. Why? This documentary refers to Roland Fryer, a brilliant economist who grew up in a very poor neighborhood in Texas in an abusive household, got a PhD in economics, and was enlisted by Harvard as a professor and given tenure at a very young age of 28. In fact, Roland Fryer was one of only 3 economists who have gotten tenure at the young age of 28. The other 2 are Jeffrey Sachs and Larry Summers. Roland Fryer is an African American, and a few years ago, Roland Fryer published a research paper, after studying police brutality in the United States, a hot topic in the United States. To do the study, he embedded himself with the police departments of 2 cities. The conclusion of his paper was that racial bias was not a major factor in police killings in America. Obviously, this is counter to all conventional wisdom at Harvard and elsewhere in the United States. So Roland Fryer was blacklisted at Harvard and he was suspended. There was suddenly a sexual harassment charge sprung up against him. He was suspended for 2 years. The economics laboratory that he had created at Harvard was shut down. And only after this documentary was produced, Harvard did some investigations and reinstated Roland Fryer back into the faculty. He is back at Harvard teaching and publishing. This raises the question of why unconventional ideas, such as Roland Fryer's paper's conclusions, are unacceptable at a liberal institution like Harvard. Now, finally, into this midst comes October 7, 2023. We know what happened on that infamous day. Hamas terrorists came into Israel and killed over 1,000 innocent civilians. Israel lashed back and committed carnage of its own, atrocities on both sides, and we have had a human tragedy, we have had a genocide, and protests all over the United States and other parts of the world. These marches and protests supported the Palestinian cause, which is a laudable cause, which is an important cause, but they turned violent and became anti-Semitic. This is why Harvard and many other universities were hauled in front of Congress, and at congressional hearings, the president of Harvard, Claudine Gay, and the heads of many other universities were uniformly incoherent. They were not able to explain why they were not able to keep Jewish faculty and Jewish students safe in their campuses. And we must ask this question: why are these universities turning into battlegrounds for violent protesters? Don't we expect universities like Harvard University and Yale and Columbia and others to lead the way to discuss and debate these matters peacefully, to bring about changes through persuasion of arguments instead of violent protests and marches? So this is why Harvard is today in trouble. Now, what should Harvard do? Harvard should take all of these matters that I've listed seriously, and Harvard must reform itself. Harvard must use this crisis as an opportunity for reform. Harvard must diversify its funding sources, manage its endowment fund better, and become significantly more affordable to all students who want to attend at Harvard. And finally, while Harvard is a great university, we must recognize that Harvard is not the only great university in America. We have many, many wonderful universities. University of Chicago, University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, Georgia Tech, Caltech, Stanford University, many, many wonderful universities, and many of them have not run into these types of controversies. And just like we spawn startups in Silicon Valley, we are also starting new universities. Have you heard of Austin University? Yes, friends, a new university in Austin, Texas has been started just a couple of years ago by some free thinkers like Niall Ferguson, the famous historian, and Barry Weiss, the former New York Times reporter, and many others have joined together to start a new university in Austin, and they're expressly saying that they will make this different from Harvard. They're actually branding Austin University to be the anti-Harvard University. So Harvard has a lot of competition, and Harvard must compete and show that it can be great again. America can be great again, so can Harvard. And what about this controversy about foreign students? Well, foreign students are welcome at Harvard. Foreign students are welcome in the United States. However, we must not overstate the role of foreign students. Harvard became a wonderful university because of all the innovations it made to education long before the influx of large numbers of foreign students, which is a phenomenon of only the most recent decades. Only in the last 20 to 30 years, large numbers of foreign students have started attending Harvard. So while foreigners are welcome and they bring in fresh points of view to our academic institutions, what makes Harvard great is the fact that it is in America. What makes Harvard great is not the fact that it takes foreign students. What makes Harvard great is the fact that Harvard University is in the United States. The ecosystem in the United States makes Harvard and other American universities the greatest universities in the world. So we don't have to be afraid that students will go away to some other country to study, to China or to Britain or France. No university in any other country can provide the type of well-rounded education that American universities can provide. So Harvard is capable of reform, and Harvard will reform, and Harvard too will become great again.